before you panic and grab chemicals, we want you to know that there is a better way to handle ticks when it comes to your dog.
Ticks are gross. We know that. They are ubiquitous across the United States. They are 8-limbed bugs, so they are more like spiders. They're arachnids. They're not actually insects. And we are lucky that in this part of the country we have hard-shelled ticks, which are somehow less gross than the soft ticks that they have in the Southwest. But they're still kind of gross. Like, that's the kind of thing we don't want to see. So they are somewhat harder to kill than insects because they are more like spiders. They're arachnids. And, people often seem amazed when the first ticks come out because they're like, oh my gosh, like there's still snow on the ground. Yes. Yeah, ticks kind of prefer the cooler weather. So they'll come out very early in the spring while there's still snow on the ground. As soon as it just kind of warms up enough for them to, kind of come back to life. Through the summer, you don't see a whole lot of them here because they're going through a metamorphosis. And then in the fall, the nymphs, the little baby ticks will emerge, and they're tiny, and it's hard to tell what kind of tick they are.
Yeah.
And then they hang out like right up until there's a hard freeze. So it can be below freezing out there, and you will still find the occasional tick until like the ground freezes all the way through and kind of puts them to bed for the winter. Yeah.
So every year there is this kind of, approaching tick season. There's this kind of like alarm bells go off across the world, and you hear, companies and powers that be come out and say, this is going to be the worst tick season that we've ever had. There's so many, and there's a lot of push and kind of fear driven about ticks. And so what we really want to do is we really want to just give you that very practical, so now I found a tick on my dog, what do I do? We really want to break that down into very kind of simple, reasonable things that you can do and really put it in its context. Yes, there are ticks. Every year there are ticks. Are there more this year than last year? Maybe. It doesn't really matter. You still deal with them in the same way. And so we kind of have 4 tips and tricks about what you're supposed to do if you actually find a tick on your dog. So number 1 is going to be to remove the tick as quickly as possible. Not only do you want to get it off your dog as quickly as possible because the longer the tick is on there, the more likely they are to transmit tick-borne diseases like Lyme, but also a quick removal of the tick is going to keep that tick from regurgitating its inner contents into your dog, which is toxic. Their saliva is toxic. And so your best approach to removing a tick is going to be to use something either like a good tweezers, or maybe even my personal favorite is a tick key. And you're going to just very quickly and swiftly remove that tick off of your dog and deposit it in something like rubbing alcohol or a toilet just to get rid of it. You can put it between a couple pieces of tape, depending on if you're okay just destroying it or if you want to save it and mail it in, which is part of step number 2. So let's say you remove the tick from your dog, then what do I do with the tick?
Right, and so some people want to identify the tick, and I'm sure if you go online, you can pretty easily find out what kind of tick it is. There's not that many of them to choose from. Now, if you want to know if your particular tick that was attached to your dog is carrying a disease, there's a website called tickcheck.com, and you can mail in your tick, and they'll tell you if that tick was carrying any diseases.
So you quickly remove the tick, and then if you want to, you can mail it in. Otherwise, you just destroy it in one of a few different ways. And then the next thing you can do is to just make sure that the attachment zone is clean and disinfected. You can do that with something as simple as an apple cider vinegar. I might dilute it in a little bit of water because by itself it can be a little bit harsh. You could use something also like green tea or something like that to kind of just gently cleanse the zone. But then you can just kind of leave it alone, let it dry out, and that you really don't have to do much else with the attachment site.
Right. And a lot of times, you can do more of like a compress. So you either mix your apple cider vinegar half and half with water or brew your green tea, let it cool, soak a cotton ball in it, put the cotton ball on the spot where the tick was attached, and press it on there for a good 2 to 5 minutes. You want the solution to be able to kind of penetrate the top layer of the skin. So both of those things, apple cider vinegar and green tea, are antiseptic, they're antifungal, they're antibacterial, and they have kind of a drying effect. So then other things that you can do, so ideally beforehand you want your dog to be raw fed and on a good rotation of supplements so that you're supporting the immune system and supporting gut health. And so if that is true for you, you probably don't need to do anything extra. Like, you're already doing those things that would keep your dog healthy and make them more resistant to disease and more capable of dealing with infections like that. If you haven't been doing those things, now's a great time to start. And then if you want like a quick boost, it's like, well, I haven't been doing those things, but I'm gonna start now, but my dog already got bitten by a tick. Get yourself some bee pollen at your health food store, spirulina, even echinacea in tablets or capsules, and just, start giving those things to your dog and give it for a week or two. It'll be a nice quick antioxidant boost to the immune system. And so that should help overall. There are homeopathic remedies that you can use as well. So ledum, L-E-D-U-M, ledum palustre is probably the most well-known of these because there was an article published several years ago about ledum being a specific treatment for Lyme disease. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, in my experience, but it is the kind of thing where you can easily give a dose of ledum 30C, and a dose would be typically 2 or 3 pellets if you find a tick attached to your dog. Now, if your dog is getting oodles of ticks every day, you don't want to give ledum every single day because that's not an ideal way to use homeopathic remedies. So that would be a conversation to have with your veterinary homeopath. But that is something where if you have a remedy kit at home or if you can get to a health food store that carries ledum, that's easy enough to give. So you would give 2 or 3 pellets 3 times a day for a couple of days, again, just to give the immune system kind of a quick boost.
So next we want to talk about kind of more long-term expectations. Of course, everyone's biggest concern when it comes to a tick biting their dog is Lyme disease. There are a lot of other tick-borne diseases as well.
Yeah.
But one thing that we want to just really touch on is, what do you do after the kind of immediate response that we talked about in those first 4 steps, Dr. Lee?
Yeah, so you've gotten the tick off, you've kind of dealt with the tick, you've dealt with the spot where the tick was attached, you're giving your dog the extra antioxidants, and then people start to think, should I have my dog tested for Lyme disease? Does it need an antibiotic? Maybe I should give it an antibiotic.
Right.
And so in my experience, again, as a holistic vet, I do not use antibiotics to treat Lyme disease. I think what I see is that when antibiotics are used for tick-borne diseases, particularly Lyme disease, all that does is make the organism produce biofilm and protect itself from the antibiotic. So from what I see, that's not a super effective treatment. The antibiotic that's used for Lyme disease has a very strong anti-inflammatory side effect, and so a lot of dogs do get better when they are given the antibiotic, but again, you have to have symptoms in order to be able to do that. I would not treat an asymptomatic dog. Now, if your dog got bitten by a tick today, when might it develop Lyme disease? And that is just the great unknown. Nobody knows. And so if your dog had a tick attached in March and now it's November and your dog is limpy and gimpy or it's a little bit lethargic, could it be from that tick bite? Maybe. I don't think there's any way to know these things. So you'd really want to have symptoms that coincide with one of the known tick-borne diseases, as well as if you get a positive test, that's kind of gravy because all of the testing for Lyme disease and the other tick-borne diseases is fairly inaccurate. So then what if you wait what you think, what's a reasonable period of time? How long would the incubation period be? Again, nobody knows. So let's say you wait 3 weeks, you take your dog in, you have the dog tested, the dot turns blue, so the dog is positive for Lyme disease. But then you have to say, yes, but does my dog have symptoms? If it doesn't have symptoms and you've done the things that we've already talked about, you have started treatment. So those things will support the immune system in its effort to protect your dog from disease and to get rid of microorganisms that should not be present.
So what's important to realize about Lyme testing is that really all it is doing is looking for the bacteria from the tick to be present in your dog's system, the antibodies.
Antibodies,
It's looking for the antibodies to the bacteria in your dog's system. That bacteria can be present without your dog having Lyme disease, and that's a very confusing thing for a lot of people. And so a lot of dogs, especially if they've been prepared and given a robust system on the front end, they're going to be able to withstand that and really just take care of the bacteria themselves, and it's not going to manifest itself into Lyme disease. So Dr. Levy, can you tell everyone what is kind of the classic symptoms that you would see, and not to say that it couldn't be something else, but what are those classic symptoms that somebody would see that are Lyme?
Classic is going to be a shifting leg lameness. And so what that means is that your dog is lame in one leg one day, just kind of randomly, hasn't been super duper athletic, hasn't had any accidents. You wake up one day, your dog is limping on one of its legs. You watch it for a couple of days, and 2 days later, it's limping in a different leg. And that is very classic for Lyme disease. Sometimes they have a fever, sometimes they lose their appetite, sometimes dogs just don't want to get out of bed. And so, it's definitely worth having your dog checked out if those things happen. And Lyme disease can be diagnosed successfully with or without a positive test. So the testing itself is not entirely necessary. We did do a whole podcast episode about Lyme disease. And so this information is covered in a lot more depth there. We also have a parasite prevention guide, which talks about all the natural ways of keeping ticks off your dogs and repelling things. And so that's, kind of like the front end and the back end there too. I usually treat Lyme disease with supplements to support the immune system and homeopathic remedies. Which homeopathic remedy depends on that individual dog's presentation, depends on the symptoms. So that's where your homeopathic vet is going to be able to help you out. There are probably other resources like Don Hamilton's book about homeopathy for cats and dogs would probably be very useful there. But there's not like I said, sometimes Leadum works great, sometimes Leadum is not the actual remedy that's needed.
So we're going to link some of these really good resources down below, everything from our podcast episode to our guides to different books that might be helpful. So check out the resources down there if you're interested in that. But really the takeaway point here is get the tick off quickly if you find a tick on your dog, and know that healthy dogs are going to handle challenges a lot better and weather these storms and be a lot more disease resistant. So just keep in mind that that's your best option as far as prevention in any scenario, is to really just build up that dog's system first so that when these things come up, you don't have as much to worry about.